The rain hammered against the windows of our small cottage in the Cotswolds, each drop a tiny drumbeat against the silence that had settled between Jean and me. We'd been married for 17 years, a lifetime in some ways, yet lately it felt like we were strangers sharing a space. I'm Foster, an IT specialist, 46 years old. Jean I always thought was my rock. Solid, dependable, beautiful in her own quiet way. But lately, she'd been distant, lost in her own world. She worked as a librarian in the nearby town of Stow-on-the-Wold, a job she adored, surrounded by the stories she loved. I encouraged it, of course. I wanted her to be happy. But the long hours, the late returns, they were starting to wear on me. It started subtly. A change in perfume, a new dress I hadn't seen before, a guarded look in her eyes when I asked about her day. Then came the phone calls. Whispered conversations in the hallway, always ending abruptly when I came near. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a new book club or a difficult patron at the library. But the feeling persisted, a gnawing unease that wouldn't let me rest. One Tuesday, I decided to surprise her. I took a day off work, planning to meet her for lunch in Stowe. I arrived at the library, a charming stone building nestled amongst the antique shops and tea rooms. The librarian at the front desk, a young woman named Braunt, smiled politely. "Jean's not here today, Mr. Foster," she said. "She called in sick. Jean never called in sick. She prided herself on her perfect attendance. "Oh," I stammered, trying to hide my surprise. I didn't realize. I was just going to take her to lunch." Braunt's smile faltered slightly. "I'm sure she appreciates the thought. Maybe you can bring her something later." I thanked her and left, the rain seeming to mock my foolish gesture. Instead of going home, I found myself driving aimlessly through the winding country lanes. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I decided to drive past Jean's favorite tea room. It was called the Rose Garden. I saw her car parked outside. My heart clenched. I parked across the street, my hands trembling. I watched the entrance, my breath catching in my throat. After what felt like an eternity, I saw her emerge. She was laughing, her face radiant. And she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. He was tall, handsome, with a confident swagger that made my blood boil. I didn't recognize him. They kissed before Jean got into her car. A deep, lingering kiss that confirmed my worst fears. I sat there, paralyzed, as she drove away. The rain blurred my vision, but I could still see the image of that kiss burned into my mind. Betrayal. It was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me gasping for air. 17 years. Had it all been a lie? I drove home in a daze, the weight of my discovery crushing me. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed time to think, to process what I had seen. I spent the afternoon pacing the cottage, replaying the scene in my head, searching for answers, for explanations. But there were none. Only the cold, hard reality of her infidelity. When Jean finally came home, she seemed perfectly normal. "How was your day, darling?" I asked, my voice betraying none of the turmoil raging inside me. "Fine," she said, hanging up her coat. "A bit quiet at the library. I'm glad to be home." She smiled, a smile that now seemed so false, so practiced. I watched her, studying her every move, searching for any sign of guilt, of remorse. But there was nothing. Only a chilling indifference that made me feel like I was living with a stranger. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind racing. I needed to know more. I needed to understand why. I decided to check her phone. I know it's a violation of privacy, but I felt like I had no other choice. I waited until she was sound asleep, then carefully retrieved her phone from her bedside table. It was password protected, of course, but I knew her birthday. I entered the code, my heart pounding in my chest. It unlocked. I scrolled through her messages, my hands shaking. There it was, a string of texts with a number saved as Alistair. The messages were explicit, intimate, filled with a passion that I hadn't seen from her in years. They talked about their secret rendezvous, their stolen moments together. They even had pet names for each other. "My dearest Genevieve," he called her. Genevieve, my wife. I felt like I was going to be sick. The messages went back for months. Months of lies, of deception, of betrayal. I read every word, each one a knife twisting in my gut. Alistair, it turned out, was a local artist, a charismatic charmer who had swept Jean off her feet. He was everything I wasn't: confident, adventurous, exciting. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the images that flooded my mind. Jean and Alistair together, laughing, touching, loving. It was too much to bear. I felt like my world was crumbling around me. I put the phone back on the bedside table, my body numb. I couldn't stay in the same bed with her, not after what I had seen. I grabbed a blanket and pillow and went asleep on the sofa in the living room. The rain continued to fall, a mournful soundtrack to my broken heart. The next morning I confronted her. I laid out all the evidence, her absence from work, the tea-room rendezvous, the incriminating text messages. She denied it at first, of course. She tried to gaslight me to make me feel like I was imagining things. "You're being paranoid, Foster," she said, her voice cold and dismissive. "You're letting your insecurities get the better of you." But I wouldn't back down. I showed her the text messages, the proof of her infidelity. Her face paled. She couldn't deny it any longer. "Okay, fine," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's true, I've been seeing someone else." "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking with emotion. "Why would you do this to us?" She shrugged, her eyes avoiding mine. "I don't know," she said. "I guess I needed something more, something different, more than me." I asked, my voice filled with pain. "Was I not enough?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, silent, indifferent. That's when I knew it was over. There was nothing left to salvage. The woman I had loved, the woman I had devoted my life to, was gone, replaced by a cold, heartless stranger. I told her to leave. I couldn't bear to look at her any longer. She packed her bags without a word, without a tear. As she walked out the door, she turned and said, "I am sorry, Foster, I really am." But her words rang hollow. They meant nothing. After she left, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The pain was still there, but it was accompanied by a sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. I had to move on. I had to rebuild my life without her. I started by contacting a lawyer. I filed for divorce, citing adultery as the reason. I wanted to make sure she didn't get a penny more than she deserved. I also started going to therapy. I needed help processing my emotions, dealing with the trauma of her betrayal. My friends were incredibly supportive. They rallied around me, offering their love and encouragement. They took me out for drinks, invited me to dinner, and reminded me that I was still a worthwhile person even after what had happened. One day, a few months after Jean left, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering it. "Hello," I said. "Is this Foster?" a voice asked. It was a woman's voice, unfamiliar yet somehow familiar. "Yes, it is," I said. "Who's this?" "My name is Braunt," she said. "From the library. I need to talk to you about Jean." My heart sank. I didn't want to hear anything more about her. "I don't think so," I said, about to hang up. "No, please," Braunt said, her voice urgent. "This is important. It's about Alistair." I hesitated, then sighed. "Okay," I said. "What is it?" Braunt took a deep breath. "Alistair isn't who he says he is," she said. "He's a con artist. He targets wealthy women, seduces them, and then bleeds them dry." I was stunned. "What do you mean?" I asked. "He's done this before," Braunt said. "He moves from town to town, preying on vulnerable women. Jean isn't his first victim." She told me that Alistair was heavily in debt and had a string of lawsuits against him for fraud. He had a history of manipulating women for financial gain. I couldn't believe it. Jean had been so blinded by her infatuation with Alistair that she hadn't seen him for what he really was, a parasite, a predator. "How do you know all this?" I asked Braunt. "I did some digging," she said. "I suspected something wasn't right. I've seen him around town before, always with a different woman on his arm." I thanked Braunt for her information. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew I had to do something. I decided to confront Jean. I tracked her down to a small flat she had rented in a nearby town. When she opened the door, she looked tired and haggard. The spark that I had once loved was gone. "What do you want, Foster?" she asked, her voice weary. "I know about Alistair," I said. "I know what he really is." Her eyes widened in alarm. "What are you talking about?" she said, trying to feign ignorance. "I know he's a con artist," I said. "I know he's using you for your money." She scoffed. "That's ridiculous," she said. "Alistair loves me. He would never do anything like that." "He doesn't love you, Jean," I said. "He's using you. He's a parasite." I told her everything Braunt had told me about his past, his debts, his history of manipulating women. At first, she refused to believe me. She clung to the illusion of their love, desperate to deny the truth. But as I laid out the evidence, the cracks in her facade began to show. Finally, she broke down. "Oh God," she sobbed. What have I done? It turned out that Alistair had already persuaded Jean to give him a large sum of money, supposedly to invest in his art business. He had also convinced her to take out a loan which he promised to repay. Now she realized that she had been duped. She had been so blinded by her desire for excitement and adventure that she had fallen prey to a ruthless con artist. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, despite everything she had done to me. She had been a victim just like I had been. But I couldn't forgive her. The betrayal was too deep, the damage too great. I left her there, sobbing in her flat. I don't know what happened to her after that. I heard rumors that Alistair disappeared with her money, leaving her heartbroken and penniless. I didn't care. She had made her choices and she had to live with the consequences. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, I spent time with my friends, and I started exploring new hobbies. It wasn't easy. The pain of Jean's betrayal lingered for a long time, but I refused to let it define me. Eventually, I met someone. Her name was Brianna. She was kind, compassionate, and honest. She was everything Jean wasn't. We started dating, and slowly, cautiously, I began to trust again. I learned that it was possible to love again, even after being betrayed. I never forgot about Jean, but I moved on. I realized that her betrayal was not a reflection of me, but a reflection of her own insecurities and desires. I learned that I deserved better, and that I was capable of finding happiness again. Years later, I heard that Jean had returned to Stow-on-the-Wold. She was working as a cleaner, struggling to make ends meet. I saw her once from a distance. She looked older, worn down by life. I felt a twinge of pity, but I didn't approach her. Our paths had diverged, and there was no going back. I'm now happily married to Brianna, and we have a beautiful family. I am grateful for the lessons I learned from my experience with Jean. I learned the importance of honesty, trust, and communication in a relationship. I learned that it's okay to let go of someone who doesn't value you. And I learned that even after the most devastating betrayal, it's possible to find love and happiness again. The rain has stopped now, and the sun is shining through the clouds. The Cotswolds are beautiful in the sunlight, a reminder of the beauty that still exists in the world, even after the storm. And I, Foster, am finally at peace.